I just knew that what my therapist was doing was magic. Wow, this is so intuitive. Looks so deeply into the soul. It changed my life, and so I wanted to learn how to do that for other people.
Hi, welcome to Resonate, Conversations and Life Lessons from Rancho La Puerta. I am your host, Barry. One of the things about Rancho La Puerta that I think adds to the magic is that we're nestled at the base of beautiful Mount Cuchuma. This mountain is considered a sacred mountain by the native peoples that settled this area. The word Cuchuma means either exalted high place or place of dreams. Many of our guests express that they have very powerful and vivid dreams while staying at the ranch. If you consider the average person is asleep about 30% of our lives, then what happens in our dream world is a big part of who we are. My special guest today is Orenda Fink. She is a therapist who specializes in dreams and shadow work. Orenda started her career as a musician and a very successful musician, but she always felt called in a different direction. She sought therapy to deal with some stuff that happened to her in her childhood and found it so helpful that she herself became interested in studying therapy. She studied the works of Carl Jung and became a therapist herself. She finds a great deal of reward in helping others navigate their lives, study their dreams and their alter egos. She has recently become an author, writing a memoir called A Witch's Daughter, which explores her childhood and surviving emotional abuse. I look forward to today's conversation. Hi, Orenda. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Barry.
It's nice to meet you. This is my first time to get to meet you.
It's so good to meet you. Thanks for having me.
So something I always start with my my interviews with is I'm always curious where people are coming from. So where are you today?
I am in a little town called 29 Palms, California, in the Mojave Desert, about
Yes, I know where that is.
outside of Joshua Tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you live there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because I read in your bio that you had. Are you from Athens, Georgia, or there's some connection to Athens, Georgia?
Yeah, I lived there for quite a number of years.
Okay, yeah. My new son-in-law is from there, so that's interesting.
Oh no, it's an amazing little town.
Right. So now you were a musician, became a therapist, became an author, and I imagine that all those three things still coexist. You're probably still all of those things.
Yeah, I do less music these days. If a friend wants me to play with them, I'll do that. But really, my passion is coaching and writing. So less music, but my art form has moved into more of the longer form, writing prose.
Right. So how did you first get into music, and how long did you do music? If you look you up, you're considered like indie pop and alternative music, the bands that you played with. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, the music I make is very slow and ethereal, but it's in the independent realm. So I don't know if there's exactly the right genre.
Yeah, it's hard to put a genre on lots of different music, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I really started music pretty young when I was 17, still in high school, and ended up getting signed to Geffen Records also very early on when I was 21. And did a little major label stint with a rock band. And then in the year 2000, kind of switched gears and was in an independent duo called Azure. And we were active for, about 23 years after that, off and on.
I've listened to some of your music online, and I really like it. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks.
So then, at what point did you decide that you wanted to be a coach?
That was during COVID. I think a lot of people had experiences during COVID, especially during the prolonged lockdown where we couldn't do our career anymore. Mm-hmm. And it really gave us, I think, an opportunity to reflect on, do I still want to do this when the world comes back? And, my husband's a musician too. All of my friends almost are musicians. And interestingly, it was kind of just me that didn't want to keep doing it. And that was actually, my heart had been calling me away from that for a long time. I mean, I basically quit music almost 15 years ago and started going back to school. And I kind of say it's kind of like the mafia. I keep getting drugged back into it, but into music. But there was something calling me away from that. And it was during COVID that I finally listened to that call because I had stopped doing it for a long enough time. So I was really, kind of thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And I had just written my memoir, which is a heavy topic, about surviving and recovering from narcissistic abuse, childhood narcissistic abuse. And I talked to my friends about, this subject to a certain degree, and people just kept telling me, you should be a coach or a therapist. This is kind of where your calling is. And being that I never went to college because I was a musician from, age 17, I decided to go the coaching route so I could take a shorter, mode of education. So I did a year-long coaching program with this wonderful place called Creative Mind University and became a Jungian coach, Carl Jung, based off of Carl Jung's analytical psychology. And I started out that way, and I just immediately loved it. And I knew this is kind of what's been missing my whole life. And so as I started to practice, I just really felt like I was where I needed to be in life. And so since then, I've just never looked back, and I love what I do.
Yeah, and so your memoir, the book is called The Witch's Daughter, correct?
Correct.
Right, and so it's a memoir about your life, and I'm assuming that the witch that you're talking about is your mother. Okay, so I do want to talk about a narcissism a little bit towards the end because I find that interesting because I don't want to. Is your mother still alive?
She is, yes.
Yeah,
But I'm no contact with her. Have been for 3 years.
Okay, so Carl Jung. What drew you to his style of therapy? I know that he worked with Freud at one point also, and my daughter's a psychoanalyst, and I mean, her and her fiance at the time, when they went to Europe, she made a point of going to visit where he was at Switzerland because she really she's quite the fan of his as well.
Oh yeah, me too. I'd love to go there. It's on my bucket list. I think he's just a genius and is one of the most underrated minds of our time. But so he was a student of Freud and then a peer, and then kind of broke away from Freud with some of his theories that Freud didn't agree with. And I was first introduced to him through my Jungian analyst. I mean, she is not an official Jungian analyst, but a Jungian informed psychotherapist. And I started going to her around 12 years ago. And she worked heavily with dreams, and I am a very active dreamer and have been my whole life. So a lot of the therapy that we did was based around my dreams, around a dream interpretation, dream analysis. And that's what really got me interested in Jungian psychology. And then when I realized I wanted to coach people after COVID, that's really what I wanted to be trained in. And I wanted to go in deeper. So I had the experience of being on the other end and being analyzed, but I didn't know the mechanics. I just knew that what my therapist was doing was magic, like, wow, this is so intuitive. Looks so deeply into the soul. It changed my life. And so I wanted to learn how to do that for other people.
Right. So let's talk. That's one of the main. You do shadow work, and also you do the dream interpretation or dream therapy, right? So, so does everyone dreams, correct?
Yes.
So, I'm one of those people that I don't remember my dreams ever. So, what is that about for me?
That is, fairly common, to be honest. And a lot of people don't remember their dreams. So there could be several reasons. People don't really know. And it can range from something physiological, a medication. It could just be the place that you're at in life. There's lots of different reasons. Like, for example, one of my best friends, when I started doing this work, she was really bummed because she didn't remember her dreams. She had not remembered a dream in probably 10 years. And she was like, I'd love for you to analyze my dreams, but I don't have them. Well, unfortunately, a couple years ago, she and her fiance broke up. And it was a very sad and tumultuous time for her. And guess what? They came right away. And she is now an active dreamer. So it just something switched on. And I think it was like the time that she needed them. And the unconscious does respond to your conscious will. So if you really go in and say, hey, I want to know, show me something. Lots of times they'll come just from that.
And I've read this numerous times, and then I saw on your Instagram that you just recently said this too, that 5% of our psychic processes are conscious and 95% are unconscious. So things that we're not even aware of. So by analyzing during the dream time, is that where a lot of those things can come out?
Yes, exactly. So the dream is coming from the unconscious. And you can think of it as that. Okay, so that 5% that we're talking about that is conscious, that is ego consciousness. That is our sense of identity and kind of how we operate in our waking world. What is in that other 95%? Right? There's a whole psychic world there. It's an immaterial world, yet it's very, very active and alive in us in the way that we view the world and how our ego interprets what is going on and what to do about it. So the dream, you could think of, it's coming from the unconscious. So it's telling you things that you don't know
on a
about
conscious
yourself.
level.
Exactly. You don't know on a conscious level. But they're coming from your higher self, which is like the self, the capital S self in Jungian psychology, is the self-regulation system for the psyche. So the self is the big, like, kind of wise Oz of your psyche. And so the self is sending you the dream. And the dream is from the point of view of the ego. So you're almost getting like this mini movie every night of what's going on psychically. But it's symbolic. It's taking all of your psychic processes and turning them into symbolic narratives. So Jung gave us a roadmap in how to understand what seems nonsensical from the dreams. There are rules to these dreams. And if you know them, you can pretty much, like, on the nose, figure out what not only what's going on within you that you may be unconscious of, but it'll be prescriptive too. It'll tell you what to do about it. And so it's up to you whether you want to listen.
So by being aware of what's going on in the unconscious part of your mind, can you alter those things? Is that the point of altering some of those? Because I always think of the unconscious mind is what's been programmed since we were born, and a lot of it's programmed when we're really young by parents and people around us, and then we stuff it in the back, and then we don't see it anymore, but it's still there.
Yes, exactly. So the ego, which is, it's kind of like a little confusing because the ego is our consciousness, but the ego is really going off of directives in the unconscious, right? Okay, so that the ego is formed in childhood, and it has all these unconscious beliefs that are the fuel to it, that kind of tell us, this person's doing this to me, and they are bad because X, Y, Z. So that's what you consciously know, but you don't know that unconsciously it's because mom did something when you were 3 years old that you don't even remember. Like, you don't even, a lot of our conditioning is pre-memory. So the ego starts forming at age 0, at the moment you're born, until about age 7, and that's when the ego's formed. So the ego is good. We need the ego. It tells us what to do. But yet it can be misinformed. It can be running on an old program from childhood, and that would be unconscious to us. So then when we look into the unconscious, that's shadow work basically, is like, hey, what is the story in here? Can we bring this to the surface of consciousness, so that we can bring in our higher self and say, is that true? You know, wait a second, is this true? I'm saying this to myself, like, and you don't even realize it. So once you start uncovering those things, it's almost like you begin to think with two minds. And so you've got your higher self and your ego, and you can have negotiation with them. You can negotiate with the ego. Like, okay, I know that you think that, and I know why, but that's not serving me anymore. So we're going to try something new.
Once you recognize what's happening on the unconscious level, can you change it?
You can change it. So basically, you could think of this, in Jung's time, he didn't know anything about the neural pathways, these microscopic neural pathways in our brain. But what we're doing when we uncover the unconscious and choose something different, even though it's difficult, even if we're trying, I always tell people, start with very low stakes things, like something you do at Starbucks, or even you may think something, but just don't do the thing you're thinking, because and no one will ever know. So low stakes things to just try to change your behavior. And as you do that and you're rewarded for it, it's almost like retraining a dog. Your neural pathways will actually start lighting up in areas that had gone dormant. And you will start to change. It will become easier and easier till you are actually a different person.
Are there some tools for someone to remember their dreams? And if you do remember them, should you write them down then? So when they go see someone like you, you're not blank.
Yes. So that's that thing about dreams. They're ephemeral. They disappear as you wake up, and if you don't write them down, they will just kind of fall away from memory. So writing them down is really important. And another reason to write them down is that they will tell you a story. And it's really magical to see, especially if you're any kind of therapy or coaching, to see how your dreams are responding to your progress or your regression. You can really, they're a report card to your psychic growth. If you have a nightmare, that's telling you like, hey, okay, you're resisting something, you're rejecting something here that you need. So let's look at that. So writing them down is really important. And also, so you're getting these messages from the unconscious because they want to filter into the consciousness. They're trying to make themselves known. So when you write them down, you're helping that process.
When you write it down, does that help release it then, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say, or it helps it almost become integrated into your consciousness.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like it's almost like it's information rising up from the unconscious, and you kind of want to catch it. It's like the dream catcher. It's like you want to catch that dream and say, what is the wisdom of this dream? Can I hold on to this a little bit longer, and meditate on this, and really think of it as representative of my internal state? It's just a really great way to stay in touch with your deepest, wisest aspects of yourself. And your kind of your deepest flaws as well. I mean, the dreams they're very honest. They're unfiltered. They come straight from the source. Right. So you can know that what's coming from the dream world is telling you the truth. And writing it down does help with memory too, with your dream recall. So basically, to try to remember your dreams, if you don't remember them at all. One thing you can try is to ask before you go to bed, hey, I'd like to remember something about my dreams tonight. And even if you can get specific and ask of yourself, I'd like to know more about this, something about your life that might be challenging you or that you have questions about. Ask and see what comes up. That does actually bring forth dreams. I've had other clients as well, besides my friend, who started having dreams once we started working together.
I've read, constantly studying this similar kind of things, but that the best time to alter your subconscious or get in there is like right before you fall asleep and right when you wake up. So if what I put into my mind right before I go to sleep, would that influence the dream that I have?
It can. It certainly can. But in the way that I see and the way I was trained, is that even if, okay, say you go to sleep watching a horror movie, right? And you have a nightmare kind of based off of that horror movie. Just because you had watched that horror movie doesn't mean that the dream is not trying to tell you something about your inner world. Right. So the hard drive that is our unconscious, it has access to everything that we've ever encountered. Every memory, which is why sometimes in a dream, you'll dream about somebody you were friends with in the third grade that you hadn't thought of in 30 years. You're like, what?
Yeah,
What are they doing there? And so it really doesn't matter if it's drawing from 30 years ago or drawing from the movie you watched that night. It's pulling from the hard drive to symbolize in some way an aspect of your inner world.
Right. So this just came into my mind too, all of a sudden talking to you. Like sometimes I have a really hard time sleeping. It's like I don't sleep well, like, sometimes 4 hours a night. Do you think that it's because perhaps I don't want to see what's going on the inside? If I sleep too long, too much is going to surface.
I don't know. I mean, is it anxiety related? Do you know that you can't
I don't really know why. Yeah. People always say, as you get older, you don't need as much sleep. And I do notice as I've gotten older, I don't sleep as much, but I don't know. And, I'm sure I'm an anxious person for sure.
Yeah, I am too. And it might, when my anxieties are level is high, it certainly affects my sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be that. And anxiety in and of itself, though, there's a lot to look into the unconscious, because anxiety, right? It's this kind of existential fear. Right. So it's rooted in the unconscious. It's not a rational fear. So this work is really good for anxiety too. Right. Yeah. And those things will come up in your dreams.
Right.
Hello, my name's Sarah. I've been coming to the ranch since 1998. I met Rona 9 years ago. She was a Mary Kay lady who believed that a stranger is a friend that you haven't met yet. She also had a pink Cadillac, one of 11 that she'd had in her whole career. In January 2019, the Mary Kay conference was in San Diego. So the week before we came to the ranch, she died 3.5 years ago. I inherited many things from Rona, but the best was her longtime friend, Nellie. I decided to bring Nellie to the ranch with me. On our way to the ranch, I saw a car with a Mary Kay sticker on the back. We arrived on the 25th of October, and we went to the Villa's Health Spa to book some massages. The lady in front of us took quite a while to book all her treatments, and as she was leaving, we asked her what her name was. Her name was Rona. The next day would have been Rona's 77th birthday, and we went to Joel's storytelling session, and I told him about this. We sang Happy Heavenly Birthday to Rona. For lunch that day, we had a salad, exactly like the salad that Rona and I used to have. Now, I can't eat spinach, and Rona hated beet greens, so when we were having salads, I would throw the spinach to her and put it on her plate, and she would throw the beet greens at me. Rona loved flowers, peacocks, chandeliers, and angels. There are peacock pillows in the concierge. Rona is surely with us this week. Thank you for listening.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast as much as I am. To learn more about our wonderful presenters and exciting weeks coming up at the ranch, go to rancholaporta.com and check out our events calendar. Make sure to mention the podcast when making your reservation to take advantage of a special offer. Some restrictions may apply. You mentioned earlier there's rules to dreams, and there's some common themes and symbols of what are a couple common things that dreams tell, like, all people, or more general?
Right. Yeah. So the most common dream symbols, the first one is your setting, and the setting of the house. Many times we're in a structure. And that house is symbolic of your psyche, the current orientation of your psyche at that moment. A very common dream symbol is your childhood home.
Okay.
A lot of people have dreams set in their childhood home. So when you have that dream, you already know right off the bat that what you're dreaming about is related to you seeing the world currently in a way that is related to childhood. And Jung would call that a complex. So there's some kind of complex there rooted in childhood. Okay, so we know that right off the bat. And so that goes for any structure. You can really see where are we looking at? And it would be some kind of emotional or interpretive way of seeing the world related to that period. If your house is falling apart, you're neglecting something. This is an aspect of yourself that's neglected. If you've got big, beautiful, shining windows, that means that you're in a really good place right now. You're allowing the light of consciousness to flow in. So the structure is really important. You in the dream are the dream ego. So it's basically kind of your egoic mind or conscious mind, where we are experiencing the dream, just like we experience life. So, and then the figure, if you have an antagonistic figure in your dream, and that could be anywhere from someone that's just annoying you to someone attacking you, that's the shadow. And that is what we repress into the unconscious. It's our rejected aspects of ourselves that we actually want to integrate. So we don't want to fight the shadow. We actually want to make friends with the shadow. And that's one of those kind of common misunderstandings in dream interpretation. The shadow is scary in the dream, but it's actually something that you want to confront and integrate and make friends with. So whenever I have a nightmare, I'm like, oh, okay, what is it? What, come on, my friend, like, tell me what you are.
Yeah. So it's a part of ourselves that we reject, or we're not comfortable with.
Exactly. And when you reject it in yourselves, you reject it in others. So you can see your shadow in dreams as nightmare figures. You see the shadow in waking life as people that you are annoyed with, or maybe argue with, or disagree with.
So that's where that little saying, treat everyone like a mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Even your negative parts, they are mirroring your negative parts. You're just unaware of those negative parts. And the negative parts, there's always a positive side to those aspects. And that's the part that we want to integrate. So a lot of times the ego will just throw the baby out with the bathwater, so that if we reject selfish people, we may not be selfish, but we're also not self-confident. We're not assertive. We're not doing self-care. So that there's always a positive side of these negative aspects.
I also read one time that if you in your dream, you never die, like that you always wake up before you die. Is that true? Have you found that to be true?
I have found that to be true. Yeah. I don't quite know everything about that exact why that is, but I have never died in a dream, and I have been like attacked by people. But yeah, I've never experienced death in a dream. I don't know. Maybe that's because we have never experienced death, so we don't have an understanding of what that feels like.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So now let's talk about shadow work. So shadow work is it sounds like it goes hand in hand with dream work.
It does. So shadow work is finding those rejected or repressed aspects of ourselves, confronting them, and then finding the positive aspects of that to integrate into our life. So the way we do that, I think there's a Young quote that says, everything that irritates us about others can tell us something about ourselves.
Yeah.
So for the shadow, the easiest way to uncover it is to look at your everyday triggers. And what I do with my clients is that, one session will bring me your biggest trigger this week. Who triggered you? And then we kind of go in deeper to that one instance. And generally, I ask people to give me 3 words or adjectives. Describe this person or event that's triggering you. And when they give me those 3 words, that's what we look into as potential shadow elements for them.
Give me an example of what like those 3 words might be that someone would give you.
So I'll give you an example of my own.
Okay.
So when I did this work myself, what the different triggers, different people, right? Over many sessions, there can be more than one shadow element in that you're triggered by, but there was one that kept coming up over and over again for me, which was out of control. So that was what was triggering me about these situations or people. They'd say, "What is it?" I'm like, "They're out of control," and I was like, "Wow, okay, that is something that triggers me all the time, and I've never put words on it, And now that I have, I did some kind of deep emotional processing of that as well, and realized, okay, that's because of my chaotic and tumultuous childhood. I'm very triggered by things that feel out of control, and I feel like I need to control them to be safe. I need things to feel controlled. So in that, once you discover that, your task is to find a way to integrate the thing that you actually fear, the thing that you actually reject. And I realized that my own rejection of chaos, of being out of control, was really affecting my life in a negative way and affecting my relationships, because here I am trying to control everybody and control everything, and people don't like to be controlled,
No.
Even if it's quote unquote for their own good, and the ego can convince you of that, that that's what you're doing. So I really had to struggle and challenge myself to integrate out of control, which the positive side of that would be being carefree, allowing people to make choices or even mistakes, allowing the world to unfold as it should be, even if it doesn't align with how you want it to be, and it actually, as I integrated this, it really alleviated a lot of my own suffering. And it changed my life.
So you can do shadow work, not necessarily with dreams, though. You could do it in other ways too, right?
Yeah. A lot of my clients don't remember their dreams. So you don't have to use dreams to do it. They're just a wonderful companion. They'll give you a little extra information. But really, there's so many other ways. And the main way is just to keep examining your triggers. To keep examining those spots in your life that, you might call a toxic pattern. Why do I keep running into this type of person? Why do I always fight with my partner about this? Why can't I stop myself from doing this? So these are all these kind of everyday triggers that once we get into them and uncover what is the fear behind this? What are we not allowing into our lives? That's where everything starts to change. So the dreams are just a wonderful companion to that. But the work is really in the conscious world. It's uncovering what's in the unconscious world and then using that to, again, just even at the beginning, slightly change things just a little bit, Like, for example, so for me, my big task was to not try to control things that felt scary to me. I mean, obviously, outside of, someone actually being dangerously out of control, which is fairly rare. So when I would find myself in the triggered and wanting to control the situation in some way, I just close my mouth and challenge myself not to do it. And it is kind of, for a second, you kind of like got to white knuckle your way through this. But no one even knows I'm doing that. That's all happening internally. And after doing those things enough, you'll start to realize you're kind of stepping out of the matrix. You're stepping out of the matrix of your ego. You don't have to do what it tells you. And sometimes that's exactly the prescription for life.
Right. And it must get easier with practice.
It does. It gets easier with practice, and then you become it. Your ego can be retrained. And sure, it can kick up, in extreme circumstances, but you're ready for it,
Right.
You're like, you've done the work, so you're kind of primed to take on the big triggers.
Yeah, I can't remember my dreams. I can't write them down for you, but I could write you books of triggers. So,
well, yeah. So if you've got triggers, you can do the work.
Yeah, that's great. So let's shift gears and talk about your book and you wrote that as a way of healing your childhood.
Yeah, when I started the book, and I started it many years ago, about 8 years ago, I was mostly just trying to make sense of my childhood. And it wasn't until I went no contact with my parents, about 3 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, that I realized what the book was about. And then I rewrote it once I realized that my mother has what I believe to be an undiagnosed personality disorder. So once I educated myself on personality disorders, that book that I had written all made sense. Everything that had ever happened to me made sense under the structural understanding of the child or victim of narcissistic abuse. So that was a huge awakening for me. And when I went no contact, I just felt compelled to rewrite the story to help people understand that might have had a similar childhood as mine, what might actually be happening to them, what might be going on. So yeah, it started out as just a way for me to understand my life, and then ultimately then to share that story and hope that helps other people.
Right. So I was reading that about 1% of the population is diagnosed with narcissism. So, but there, just like so many different things, there's like 10 characteristics, right? And if you have 7, you're a narcissist, but if you have 6, you're not, but you still have those characteristics. So how prevalent do you feel like it's in our society? I wouldn't want to pull out any examples from the news, but.
Yeah, exactly. Some people estimate that it's between 1% and 3%, but I actually think it's much, much higher than that. I'm more in the camp of Dr. Ramani. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's known as the world's leading expert on narcissistic abuse, and she estimates somewhere between 15% and 19%.
Wow.
And that's because, one, most cases of narcissistic personality disorder are not diagnosed.
Because those people would never go get diagnosed.
Well, it's literally part of the disorder is that they cannot be self-aware or take accountability. So you can see how it's very difficult to diagnose this. And two, when you're talking about, let's say, what I'm talking about, which is the abuse aspect of it, in terms of being a victim or a survivor, the cluster B personality disorders include borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, sociopathy, and psychopathy. So there are 4 of those, and they all have narcissism at their core. So we're not just talking about narcissistic personality disorder. We're talking about all of the cluster Bs. And so if you take all of that, I absolutely think the number's more, around 15 to 19%, which means that millions of people are affected by these personality disorders, probably up to like 60 million in the United States alone.
Do you think that those people that have those qualities, it's not, are they born with it, or they acquire it? Can they change? I'm guessing they would have to want to change. And is that one of the reasons you're not in contact with your mother now?
Yeah, this is an area of emerging research. And there, about a handful of, experts in narcissistic abuse that are very public, and they don't even agree. No one really knows the answer to this, but my opinion is that it's like schizophrenia, where it's nature and nurture. So you are probably born with a genetic predisposition for it, and so you may have it right off the bat, or something in the environment could kind of trigger it at some point in your life. But generally, you're going to be in that range of behavior, I think pretty early on, but it can get more pronounced in your 20s, let's say. So it has some similarities to schizophrenia like that. But I say probably more nature, and then some nurture. And I think that when you're looking at borderline would probably be the most likely to be from nurture. And I think narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy would probably be something you're born with. This is my opinion. It's not really known.
When did you realize that that's what was going on in your life?
And to answer your other question, yes, I believe once it's high enough on the spectrum, when it's a pathology, I don't think that it is treatable. I don't think it's curable. And that is why I went no contact with my mother, because I had the awakening or the understanding that this wasn't going to end. And it was so destructive to my life and my sister's life that I felt like it was the right thing for us to make, me, and she made this decision as well, to get out of it, to get out of the toxic family system. I discovered this when, a long time ago, my therapist, my wonderful therapist, had said, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, she had said, I think your mom has borderline personality disorder. And I looked it up, and I read the 9 traits, that you're supposed to have, but she had all of them. And I was like, yep, she's got whatever that is, she's got it. And I didn't really think much more about it. That's how kind of just enmeshed I was with this family system. And it wasn't until there was a big blow up between me and my mom during COVID over Zoom that popped back in my head. I think I'm going to look up more about this borderline personality disorder. And I got this book called Understanding the Borderline Mother by Dr. Christine Ann Lawson. And this book is written in the 90s. So it's a little outdated, but it blew my mind open. It transformed my world. I thought I was reading about my own life. I had never even encountered anything, any literature or article that had summed up my life like this book, and particularly the subtype called The Witch. And that's where the title of the book comes from. Also, my mom is a witch. She practices witchcraft. And so it kind of has a double meaning. But that book really blew my mind open. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with something much, much bigger than I've ever quite understood here. But it's starting to make sense why there's so much mental illness and tragedy and dysfunction in my family. And I need to start protecting myself from this. And then probably 1.5 or 2 years later, another big blow up happened, and that's when I went no contact. So I gave it a good shot, even like for 1.5 years, knowing, using all of the tricks, the yellow rocking, the firewall, everything, and it wasn't working. Right.
So does she accept that, or does she still try to contact you?
She doesn't try to contact me.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give someone who like just avoid those kind of people? Probably the best. Avoid 20% of the population.
Yes. In fact, it is my advice. and most coaches, narcissistic recovery coaches, say the same thing. If you can, just get away from them. If you
because they can't change, can they?
They can't change. And I have a lot of compassion for my mother. I mean, this is a terrible tragedy, in my life. I love her. And it's very, very deeply sad. I've, had to go through a lot of grief over all of this. But the simple truth is that people, when they have a very high, severe personality disorder, they're extremely destructive to the people around them. And the disorder is predicated upon your destruction. There's no way to get out of it. You can't be in relationship with one of these people without that occurring. And that's that. So yes, it's basically like if you don't have a child with this person, if you're not, taking care of an aging narcissistic parent, or, have some kind of business together that you can't get out of right at the moment. Sure, there are all kinds of tactics and ways that we can mitigate the situation.
Right.
But the overall advice is just to get out of it.
Right. So do you had mentioned that there could be a genetic component. Did you fear that you might have that component?
I don't fear that I have it. I have, during doing this deep shadow work, I have uncovered aspects of myself that feel narcissistic, so that I've really very much wanted to look at those and change those, like controlling.
Right.
Narcissistic abuse is a very controlling, dominating abuse. So even though I'm kind of controlling from the place of I want people to be safe and I want to be safe, it's still control.
Right.
And so there are definitely aspects, because of my childhood trauma, my CPTSD, that can look like narcissistic traits.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's hopeful for me of what you're saying is that I feel like you're being aware, you're doing the work, you're looking inward to see. So I think that shining the like I know a narcissist too, but I think that person never really looks as deeply as what you're doing. So maybe there's a chance that, people can, if they catch it earlier,
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that, in that, okay, this is uncurable, this is untreatable, and I'm not meaning to contradict myself here, but I do think that it's a spectrum. So
Right.
you can be lower on the spectrum and catch it early and kind of force yourself into some accountability. And I think you can avoid the pitfalls of the aging narcissist, which is that you have abused everyone to the point that they ultimately do end up abandoning you because they can't take it anymore.
Right.
So, no one wants to be in that position. It's a terrible, pitiable position.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there could be cases where people can get help if they have the
Right.
self-awareness early on. I have a few clients who've been diagnosed with personality disorders. And I feel very honored to work with them because, sometimes I question, do they actually have one if they're here with me?
Right, yeah.
Because, but, I'm not a doctor, I'm not diagnosing people, but I'm very encouraging, and I love that they're trying to work on themselves,
Right.
and develop that self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I could probably talk to you for another hour. It's
I know.
amazing, but I'm just running out of time. So I hope that we can get you to Rancho La Puerta for you to, gosh, you could sing, you could do lectures. It would be great. And you're not so far away either. So
I would love to. Absolutely. Yeah. I just
so
heard so many amazing things about it.
So, and I learned a lot today, and I really enjoyed talking to you. So we need
Thank you.
we need people like you on the planet now more than ever.
Aw,
So I'm
thank
so
you
glad
so
that you're
much.
here. So thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Orenda said that it's estimated that up to 95% of what's in our mind is in the subconscious, and yet it plays a large part of our personalities and how we navigate our lives. But how do we find out what those hidden beliefs are inside our minds, these things that manifest and we don't know where they're coming from. One way, Orenda says, is through your dreams. Our dreams send us messages from the subconscious. Some of what is stored and manifesting in our lives is no longer healthy for us. If you think about it, much of our personalities were formed when we were kids. Maybe someone said something to you and you were 5 years old and it imprinted in your mind, and now it surfaces and it's not serving you anymore. But until you're aware of it, you can't change it or alter it. Becoming aware of our subconscious can help us to integrate hidden parts of who we are. And we all have different parts of our personalities, and that's what shadow work is, Orenda says. Like the shadow of this part of me that maybe is not so positive as this other part of me, but how do we integrate those together and understand where they're coming from? I joke with Orenda that I'm one of those people who never remembers its dreams. If I dream, I don't remember dreaming. So I think maybe I don't want to know what's going on in my subconscious. Orenda's advice to me was to tell myself when I go to bed before I fall asleep, I want to remember my dreams tonight. And you know what? I've done it for 2 days now, and I have remembered my dreams, at least part of them, and written them down, and I can't wait to hear what Orenda thinks about them. Until next time, this is Barry wishing you health, joy, and lots of dreams.